Were you guys expecting to find as many things wrong with this GTX as we did? I wasn't, you know. Now I know the more cynical amongst you were, you know, because you're expecting to find problems everywhere. But I wasn't expecting to find this many problems throughout the whole car. Andy, the owner of it, I think he actually was. And let's get something straight now. He knew going in this car needed work and it had some issues. So he paid a very good price for it. So he's not really that upset. He's not that rattled by it. You know, it's more than he expected, but he's still in the good with it. So, you know, that said. But I was not expecting as much wrong with this car, with this engine, as we found. That's probably the worst Hemi I've ever. So now a lot of you guys only know me from this channel, and you only know me from building, you know, backyard building Slane 6s and 318s and stuff. But for the better part of 15 years, the only engines I touched were 426 Hemis. Ray Barton, Lou Vanonia, John Bauman were people I consulted with on a regular basis. Friends of mine. And then, you know, I put all that in my past. But that's besides the point. Of all of my years of screwing around with Hemis, I never saw one with as many issues as this one had. So it makes for great video. Don't get me wrong now, you know, just like on the old, the TV news, you know, the cliche was, if it bleeds, it leads, right? And our best videos, so two of our biggest videos, one with 4.5 million views and one with 1 million views, have to do with, you know, car dealer ripoffs, you know, people getting screwed on classic cars. So even though it gets good views, we try not to focus on that aspect of the industry. We try not to be, you know, negative about it. We could probably do a scam video once a week, and we'd have a lot of views. But I don't want that kind of channel. But this one here just kind of like dropped in our lap, and it's like it brings into question, like, really, what can you trust? Because here we have a car that was purchased by Andy from an older gentleman. The car was part of a collection. And by this fellow's words, this was the best running Hemi car he had ever had. All right, so I don't want to call the guy a liar. I'm not going to call him a liar because I don't know him and I wasn't there and the whole 10 yards. But the evidence that we uncovered as we're going along says that's not possible. If this was the best running Hemi he ever had, that means he never had a running Hemi. Because clearly this engine was running on like 5 cylinders. I mean, most of them are just washed. The very first thing we found when we popped the air cleaner off was the choke was closed. There was no heat source to open it up. So for as long as this thing was running, for any amount of time that it was running with the choke closed, and it was just drinking gas. So this was the best running Hemi that the guy had. All right, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say he's never had a running Hemi before. He doesn't know what a Hemi is supposed to feel like, and this was the best that he could come up with. But then he produced paperwork from a machine shop in Texas from 2003 outlining all of the things that he believed had been done to the engine. Now, I'm not saying he tried to deceive the buyer, you know, by saying, oh, I have all this paperwork, look, it's all good. No, this is the paperwork that he got when he got the car, and that paperwork outlines the build of a Hemi engine. Everything, I went through all of the paperwork, and it was everything but the cam specs were in there, everything but. And I specifically looked for the cam specs, so I went through those papers pretty carefully. But now, some of you guys watching this video are like, well, who was a machine shop? You know, what? I'm not going to out a machine shop that, you know, may or may not have actually done that engine. It's paperwork. The seller of this car might have acquired that paperwork from the flipper or so, and passed it along, but there's no chain of custody between that machine shop, this engine, the seller, and then Andy the buyer. So it's not a matter of outing somebody. I don't know if that paperwork actually went to this engine, or how many times this engine's been opened up since then. See, there's no way to tell with this stuff. But what is clear as we're autopsying this entire car is there's a class of car that appears to me a prime candidate for flipper thievery, right? I'm not saying that the guy that Andy bought this car from is a thief. What I'm saying is that this type of car is prime. Okay, the classic car I'm referring to are the type that would end up in, let's say, a rich guy's collection. And I've seen many of these collections over the years. And what happens is these guys that have a lot of money and not a lot of experience and not a lot of knowledge, not a lot of savvy, go to things like auctions and whatnot, and they buy. They got more money than they know what to do with. So, a car comes over the block and they like the paint job on it, or they like whatever it happens to be. They'll bid on it, they buy it, they bring it home, and it just sits in their collection. And Hemi cars tend to fit into that category as well. So if you're an unscrupulous flipper, it would be fairly easy to get your hands on a Hemi body, an original Hemi body, and then find a bunch of used up race parts, which is what we have here, slam it all together, get it to run quietly, just enough to get it over the auction block and then onto the transporter's truck, and then that's it. There's a really good chance this thing is going to end up in somebody's warehouse collection, parked among 75 other cars, and it'll never get started again, it'll never get moved again, it's going to sit there until this guy drops dead. So, and I believe that when this car was put together, that's what the intention was. They were like, okay, this is going to be an auction car, whatever it's going to be, it's just got to get it to run long enough. And that's what happened. We have an engine that was built to run just long enough. And it was built by somebody who has absolutely no experience, not only with Hemis, but no experience with Chrysler engines. So, and again, let's go back to that machine shop. There's no way for me to know that that machine shop is the one that actually did this engine. So that's a moot point. The other type of car that kind of falls into that category is resto mods. Every shop, every hot rod shop in the country for the last 20 years has been banging out these resto mods. But you never see them anywhere. But if you go to like these rich guys collections, actually we have one right up the street over here that I was at a couple of years ago. And it's nothing but resto mods. It's a sea of resto mods. Like these shops, they bang these things out and then they end up in these collections. You never see them on the road. You never see them actually doing anything. You see a handful of them out there, and they're usually owner-built. But the shop-built ones, the radical ones, and the custom ones, and the full house ones, you never see them out in the world because they're built for that impulse buy, for the auction, and then they know this thing's just going to disappear into the hole of somebody's collection, and it's going to sit there with a dead battery and not flat tires. They keep airing up the tires, but the battery would be dead and everything else, and the car won't move for the rest of eternity. So that, I believe, is what we have here. How do you protect yourself? I don't have a clue. Like I said, I'm doing this for a long time. I've seen everything you can see, right? There was no way for me to anticipate, judging by the car's condition and the overall condition of things and the story that came with it, there was just no way I could conceive of all of the things we found wrong with this. Before we did this video, I was going to pop a couple of valves out of the head. I wanted to show you the intake valves because it's a mixed-match bunch of intake valves, and a couple of them are like, you could tell they're new, they've got the same patina as the combustion chambers and everything, and a couple of them are just crusted up with old carbon, like they came out of somebody's daily driver. And you remember, like a lot of these Hemi engines, the first few years they were around, they were people's daily drivers. So you'll find ones that haven't been cracked open and whatnot, and they'll have a lot of just like the normal crust and gack that you find inside of an engine. Well, inside those heads, I've got half the valves are like that. They didn't even bother cleaning the valves on a wire wheel to put the engine together like, cleanly or respectfully. They just slam it in there and go. How do you protect yourself? I have no clue. But this is the perfect example of, if it's too good a deal, if it's too good to be true, maybe it is, because you got a screaming deal on this. Now we know why he got a screaming deal on this. And okay, so where we're at right now is Andy is on the fence about whether he's going to put the time, effort, and energy into this particular engine, or if he's going to find another one. He's looking at a couple of different things. It's open right now what direction he wants to go. And that brings us to what we're doing with this project and what we do with this shop. And all right, so for the record, okay, this is not a shop. This is a studio to do YouTube videos. And none of the cars that we feature in this thing, like Andy's GTX or Austin Sport Fear or anything like that, those are not customers. No money ever changes hands. No money, no favors, no parts ever change hands between me and the owner of the car. They bring the car here. They're supposed to be doing the work. We're helping them and documenting everything that goes on with the video. That's what we do. We make videos. We don't build cars for customers. We don't fix cars for customers. We don't do any of the stuff. We help people along who are doing it. And if you're interested, get a hold of us, uncletonysgarage@gmail.com. And if you're interested and you're in the Nashville area and you're willing to work on your own car, you're not going to drop the car off and have us do it, but you're willing to work on your own car, you have a definite plan for it, you've got the cash to buy all the parts and cover all of the things that are needed as it goes along, and you want to participate, get a hold of us. And if it's an interesting build, like this is a very interesting build, we're game, let's talk. But just for the record, like I said, these are not customer cars. Andy is not a customer. He's doing his own car, and we're doing it through the videos here. So I think that was I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Tomorrow tomorrow we'll pick back up on the Miata. But that's it for this. He's still on the fence. He sent me a link to an engine that he's thinking about picking up, and I told him exactly what I told him. I'll tell you. I said, I don't spend other people's money, but I think that's a good way to go, because he's looking at one that's like really nice, virgin, original, untouched motor. It's a part for inspection. So that's another thing too, important. You're going to get something like a 426 Hemi, right? You don't want to ever buy one of these engines. And I'm telling you, I relearned a lesson from a long time ago. You don't ever want to buy one of these engines when it's all together in one piece. If you're going to buy a 426 Hemi, buy it apart for inspection, because there's just too many things you can hide inside of one of those. That's it for now. I'll see you guys tomorrow.